Perry Miller, Harvard church historian, did a lecture in the 50s that was entitled "Standing on the Threshold of an Inconceivable Age." And I think that phrase describes the moment in time that we live at presently. We live at a time in which it's not just that the world is changing, it's not just that technology is changing, but our entire way that we live our lives and view the world morally is changing. And we're moving into a world that I think it's very difficult for us to conceive what it's going to look like for 10 or 20 years. And I think we don't understand the implications of it, and I don't think we understand how we got here. And so in my particular talk and book, what I try to do is explain how we got here and why we got here. And I think that we lived for almost 4,000 years in something that I call the T world, or the traditional world. And it was a world that was informed by the idea that when we're born into a matrix of relationships. We're born into family and into community and into cities, into religious communities. And that life was lived within those communities, and that fulfillment was found by trying to find contentment in healthy relating. And we lived lives for others. We lived lives for God. We lived life in terms of how does this enhance our mutual relationships. And quality of life equaled quality of relationship. It was a world that was probably dominated by Greek philosophy, a sense that there is something beyond the Greek gods that exists, that must have put this world into motion, that there's a reason why the planets don't run into each other. And Aristotle and Plato were always seeking to try to understand and contemplate that being that lay beyond us. Then when you put Christianity, Judaism, Islam in the mix, you can take this family matrix, which is part of those religions, as well as the search for the divine, and you can see that Western civilization is built on this relational matrix, and it's consistent either with non-religious philosophy or with various revealed religions. But the church got it wrong on science, and the church got it wrong in the Middle Ages, and when we realized that Galileo and his colleagues were correct, that everything didn't revolve around the earth, the world asked the very important question: if the church was wrong about this, what else is it wrong about? And we moved into an era of which we call modernity, which is an era in which science determined what was true or false. And while science is terrific at helping us understand the natural world, when we tried to figure out human beings, what we discovered is that science is not helpful in morality. And David Hume probably summarized it the best when he said, you can't derive an ought from an is. Science can tell us what is. Science can't tell us what ought to be. Science can give us nuclear weapons. Science can't tell us how or whether to use them. And if science doesn't provide morality, and if we've discredited revealed religion and philosophy, then what's left? And Nietzsche asks the question in one of his diaries, the why has no answer. And he's basically saying, if we're completely honest with ourselves, that all morality is subjective, there's no way you can differentiate between Mother Teresa and Adolf Hitler, and that it's about power, and getting power and wielding power. And in the 1960s in America, it was like all of a sudden the professors and the students read Nietzsche, they decided he was right, and they threw off the T world, and we inaugurated a new world, and it's a world that I call the I world, where individualism reigns. And with every passing year, we are moving further and further into this I world. There's a group of people on this earth who still live in the T world. They know it, they accept it. But the younger generation, if you start talking to them about the T world, they don't even know what you're talking about. In fact, they have a hard time imagining that such a world would exist. And we live at a time now in which we can do anything we want, so long as it's consensual, so long as it doesn't hurt somebody, and so long as we don't tell anybody else that whatever they believe is wrong. Those seem to be the only three things that guide us presently, and everything else goes. The problem is that it doesn't work. The problem is that you can't live in a world where people can do as they please and have it hang together coherently. There's only one school of philosophy that would let you do that, and that's anarchism. Unless you're an anarchist, what you realize, you have to have rules, you have to have regulations, you have to have law. How are you going to find that? Well, Nietzsche believed, and I think he's right, that if we live in the I world, the logical conclusion is going to be fascism. The logical conclusion is we're going to have to create government that's so strong and powerful that it can force us to cohere when our behavior, quite frankly, is incoherent as a society. And I'm arguing the I world, that doesn't have to be our destiny. We can have a different future. We don't have to go back to the T world. I don't think we could go back if we wanted to. But what we can do is we can go forward to a different world, a world that I call the R world, a world in which we recover the importance of relationships in every dimension, a world that asks the question, is this particular activity, is this particular purchase, is this particular decision, how does it enhance my ability to love? How does it enhance my ability to relate to my fellow human beings? And I think this is a really important message for our day, because we live in a day that's very sexual, very materialistic. The sexuality won't ultimately be fulfilling. The materialism can't be sustained. We probably live on the edge of economic collapse. But the good news is there's no recession on relationship. And so at this moment in time when our culture is too afraid to look at the future, too afraid to imagine what it could be with economic recession, the reality is that there's good news. The good news is there's no recession on love, there's no recession on relationship, and that we have a message that will move us forward. It's certainly compatible with Christianity, but I think the truth is it's a message that will resonate across religious boundaries and across various boundaries that exist in this world, and that this is possible. It's not a pipe dream, it's possible. People lived as if relationships mattered for a long time, and we can live that way again.